A serene wooden lodge nestled among towering pines that stretch endlessly toward snow-capped peaks. Morning mist clings to the valley floor like ghostly fingers. Cars with license plates from different states dot the gravel parking lot, a testament to the distances people travel seeking answers to questions they can barely articulate. A weathered sign reads, "Inner Light Spiritual Retreat, June 15, 2019. Wind chimes hanging from the lodge's wraparound porch create a gentle symphony with each mountain breeze. The air carries the scent of pine resin and wildflowers, mixed with something indefinable, perhaps hope, perhaps desperation. A beat-up Honda Civic with California plates pulls into the lot. Sarah Chen, 34, sits behind the wheel, engine running, staring at the retreat center through cracked sunglasses. Dark circles under her eyes suggest months of sleepless nights. Her hands grip the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles have gone white. In the passenger seat lies a crumpled brochure. Discover your true self through Jungian psychology. Red ink marks scattered throughout suggest multiple readings, multiple moments of doubt and recommitment. Sarah takes a shaky breath, turns off the engine, and whispers to herself, "Sarah? Okay, David. If you're out there, if there's really something more than this, show me." She steps out of the car carrying a worn duffel bag and a leather journal held together with rubber bands. INT Retreat Center, Main Hall. Day 40 participants sit in a carefully arranged circle on hand-woven meditation cushions, the eye. Hall's vaulted ceiling draws the eye upward to exposed wooden beams carved with symbols from various spiritual traditions, Celtic knots, Sanskrit mantras, Native American totems. Large windows frame the mountain vista like living paintings. Sarah Chen, 34, a software engineer with tired eyes and calloused fingers from too many hours at a keyboard, sits between Michael Torres, 41, a divorced therapist whose wedding ring, tan line is still visible after 8 months, and Elena Vasquez, 28, an art student with paint-stained fingers and a canvas bag decorated with patches from museums around the world. Other participants form the human mosaic of modern spiritual seeking. Janet Morrison, 67, a retired nurse whose husband died of Alzheimer's. Ryan Decker, 25, a former military medic struggling with PTSD. Maria Santos, 39, a single mother whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver. Thomas Wright, 52, a former pastor who lost his faith after his church's financial scandal. Dr. Patricia Aldrich, 58, the retreat leader, sits cross-legged at the front. Her silver hair catches the morning light streaming through tall windows, creating an almost ethereal halo effect. She wears simple clothing, linen pants, cotton blouse, but carries herself with the quiet authority of someone who has guided hundreds of souls through their darkest passages. Behind her hangs a massive mandala tapestry, its intricate geometric patterns seeming to shift and breathe in the changing light. Dr. Aldrich, we gather not to find ourselves, but to remember who we've always been. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he also warned us, this journey demands we face our shadow, the parts of ourselves we've spent lifetimes avoiding. Sarah fidgets with her phone, scrolling through 17 missed calls from her mother. She catches herself, sighs, then places the device in the wooden box labeled Digital Detox at her feet. The separation feels like severing a lifeline. Dr. Aldrich, Conti D. For the next 7 days, we'll explore the depths Jung called the collective unconscious, the shared psychic space where all human experiences connect. Some of you may experience what he termed synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that suggest a deeper pattern to existence. Michael shifts uncomfortably, his therapist's training warring with his personal desperation. He's spent years helping others navigate psychological terrain he's never mapped in himself. Alina, voice barely above a whisper, what if we're not ready for what we find? What if What if we're not strong enough? Dr. Aldrich's eyes soften as she focuses on Elena, recognizing the specific quality of grief that accompanies suicide loss. Dr. Aldrich Jung believed that what we resist persists. The unconscious will surface what needs healing, whether we feel ready or not. But readiness isn't about strength. It's about willingness. Are you willing to meet whatever arises with compassion rather than judgment? Elena. I don't know. I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. Ryan, suddenly, with military directness. How do you find compassion for the parts of yourself that got people killed? The circle falls silent. Dr. Aldrich allows the weight of his question to settle before responding. Dr. Aldrich, by understanding that the shadow isn't evil, it's unconscious. Every soldier who's seen combat carries pieces of experience too intense for the conscious mind to process. Those pieces don't disappear. They go underground, influencing our dreams, our relationships, our sense of self-worth. She looks around, the circle making eye contact with each participant. Dr. Aldrich Quantity. Tonight begins our first shadow work session. I want you to prepare by journaling about a recurring dream or symbol that's appeared in your life recently. Don't analyze it. Don't try to make sense of it. Simply witness it and record what you witness. Sarah stares at the mandala tapestry behind Dr. Aldrich, its patterns seeming to pulse with a rhythm that matches her heartbeat. XT. Forest Trail. Late afternoon, Sarah walks alone along a narrow dirt path that winds between ancient pines and towering Douglas firs. Her journal is clutched against her chest like armor. Shafts of golden sunlight filter through the dense canopy, creating cathedral-like columns of light that dance with floating dust and pollen. The forest floor is carpeted with decades of fallen needles that muffle her footsteps, creating an almost supernatural silence broken only by the distant call of a loon across the lake and the whisper of wind through branches overhead. She passes a massive tree stump, its surface flat and smooth as a table, covered with intricate carvings left by previous retreat participants, initials, dates, hearts, spiritual symbols from dozens of traditions. Someone has carved "Love Never Dies" in block letters near the center. Sarah runs her fingers over the words, feeling the grooves, worn smooth by weather and time. Sarah whispered to herself, "If that's true, where are you, David? Where the hell are you?" She continues down the path until it opens into a small clearing where a perfect circle of stones surrounds a natural spring. The water bubbles up from some underground source, crystal clear and so still it mirrors the sky like polished obsidian. Ancient prayer flags from Tibet hang from low branches, their colors faded by seasons of mountain weather. Wind chimes made from local river stones create gentle music that seems to emanate from the earth itself. Sarah sits on a moss-covered log that feels like it was placed there specifically for contemplation. The setting sun paints everything on, shades of amber and gold. She opens her journal, and her pen hovers over the blank page like a diving rod seeking water. Sarah, whispering to herself, "The red door." It's always the red door. She begins to write, her handwriting flowing across the page with unusual fluidity. Sarah, Conted, reading aloud as she writes. "For 3 months, since the night David died, I've dreamed of a red door at the end of a long hallway. The hallway stretches forever, lined with photographs of moments I can't quite remember. Birthdays, Christmases, ordinary Tuesday afternoons that somehow felt important." She pauses, pen suspended, as a memory surfaces unbidden. Sarah, Conted, continuing to write. "I reach for the handle, but my hand passes through it like mist, like the door isn't quite real, or I'm not quite solid enough to touch it. Behind the door, someone is calling my name. The voice is familiar, warm, tinged with the kind of laughter that only comes from shared secrets and sibling jokes. A twig snaps behind her with the sharp crack of something substantial. Not a squirrel or bird, but something larger moving deliberately through the underbrush. She turns but sees only shadows between the trees, shifting patterns of light and dark that could be anything or nothing. Sarah? Can't D? Voice slightly shaky. Hello? Is someone there? The forest responds with absolute silence, as if even the wind has stopped to listen. Then, gradually, the normal sounds return, a woodpecker's distant drumming, the rustle of small creatures in the leaf litter, the gentle bubble of the spring. Sarah turns back to her journal, but finds her hand trembling slightly as she continues to write. Sarah, Conti D, writing more urgently now. The strangest part isn't that I can't open the door. The strangest part is that I'm afraid to. What if what's on the other side isn't David? What if it's empty space? What if the voice calling my name is just my own echo, bouncing off the walls of my desperate imagination? She closes the journal and looks directly at the spring. In its still surface, she sees her own reflection, but for just a moment, it looks like someone else. A face similar to hers but masculine, with the same dark eyes but creased at the corners for more laughter than she's allowed herself in years. Sarah, Conti D, to the reflection. I know you're here. I can feel you watching. But I don't know how to reach you. I don't know how to stop being angry at you for leaving me alone with all this emptiness. The reflection wavers, and when it settles, it's just her own face again, tired, grieving, but somehow more open than it was an hour ago. NT Retreat Center, Sarah's room, night. A simple cabin room with knotty pine walls and twin beds covered in hand-stitched quilts. Native American dream catchers hang from the ceiling, casting intricate shadows in the lamplight. The air smells of cedar and sage from the smudging ceremony, performed before guests arrived. Sarah's roommate, Jenny Walsh, 45, a kindergarten teacher from Oregon whose husband left her for his secretary 6 months ago, sleeps peacefully in the bed closest to the window. Her breathing is deep and even, the sleep of someone who has cried all her tears and found a fragile peace. Sarah sits cross-legged on her bed, still fully dressed despite the late hour. Her journal lies open in her lap, pages filled with cramped handwriting that becomes increasingly erratic as the entries progress. The bedside lamp creates a warm pool of light in the otherwise dark room. Sarah, writing aloud in a whisper, Day 1. Dr. Aldrich says spiritual awakening is like psychological death. The ego must dissolve for the true self to emerge. But what? If there's nothing underneath? What if I'm just emptiness pretending to be a person? She pauses, pen hovering over the page, then continues with more urgency. Sarah, Kana D, still writing. I've been thinking about something David said to me last Christmas. We were sitting on Mom's porch, drinking her terrible eggnog, and he told me he sometimes felt like he was watching his life from outside, like he was a character in someone else's story. I laughed it off then, told him he was being dramatic. But now I understand what he meant. She looks up from the journal and stares out the window. The forest is pitch black, except for a single light moving between the trees, a flashlight bobbing up and down with someone's walking rhythm. The light moves with purpose, following what might be a trail she hasn't discovered yet. Sarah, Conti D, whispering, Who's out there? It's past midnight. She sets the journal aside and moves closer to the window, pressing her face against the cool glass. The light stops moving, as if whoever holds it sensed her watching. For a moment, Sarah could swear the light is pointed directly at her window, creating a connection across the darkness. Then it vanishes completely, leaving only the impenetrable black of the forest night. Sarah returns to her bed and picks up the journal again. Sarah, Conted, writing with slightly shaky handwriting. There's something about this place that feels alive. Not just the trees and animals, but the space itself, like it's been holding onto the energy of everyone who's ever come here seeking answers. I can feel their hopes and fears soaked into the walls, their unfinished business hanging in the air like morning mist. She pauses and looks across at Jenny, who has shifted in her sleep and is now murmuring something unintelligible. Sarah, Comte D. Continuing to write, Jung wrote about places that serve as temenos, sacred containers where transformation can safely occur. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe that's why I felt drawn to come here despite every logical part of my mind screaming that it's pseudo-scientific nonsense. Jenny suddenly sits up in bed, eyes wide open, but clearly still asleep. Jenny, sleep-talking, voice distant. The children are waiting by the water. They can't cross until someone calls their names. Sarah freezes, pen suspended over the page. Jenny's face is peaceful despite her words, bathed in moonlight from the window. Jenny, Comte Id, still sleep-talking. Tell them it's safe to come home now. Tell them the door is open. Jenny lies back down and immediately returns to deep quiet. Sleep, leaving Sarah staring at her in the lamplight. Sarah, whispering to her journal. The door's open. What door and who are the children by the water? She writes furiously now, the words pouring out as if dictated by some external source. Sarah, Comte. Writing aloud. Maybe we're all children by the water, stuck between one state of being and another, waiting for permission to cross over into whatever comes next. Maybe death isn't an ending, but a crossing. And maybe David is on the other side trying to tell me the door is open, that it's safe to let go of the guilt and grief that keep me anchored to this side. She closes the journal and looks out the window again. This time, she sees no mysterious lights, only her own reflection superimposed on the darkness, and beyond that, the vast mystery of a forest that seems to hold more secrets than any one retreat could possibly uncover. Int. Retreat Center, Main Hall, Day 2. The group sits in circle again. Several participants look exhausted. Michael. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in my childhood bedroom, but the walls kept changing colors. Red, then blue, then black. Dar Aldrich. The psyche speaks in symbols. Michael. Jung. Called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. What do you think those changing walls represent? Michael. I don't know. Instability? Fear? Elena raises her hand tentatively. Elena. I dreamed I was painting, but instead of paint, blood came from my brushes. The canvas was alive. It was breathing. Sarah looks around the circle. Everyone seems to be having intense dreams, except her. Dr. Aldrich. Sarah, you've been quiet. Have you experienced any dreams or visions? Sarah. The same dream I've had for months. A red door I can't open. Dr. Aldrich doors are powerful symbols in Jungian psychology. They represent transitions, thresholds between conscious and unconscious states. What do you think waits behind your door? Sarah, I'm afraid to find out. Dr. Aldrich Jung said that what we need most will be found where we least want to look. Perhaps it's time to stop trying to open the door and instead ask why you're afraid of what's behind it. XT. Forest Trail. Day 2 afternoon, Zara and Elena walk together along a different path. Elena carries a sketch pad. Elena, you seem different than the others, like you're holding something back. Sarah, I'm a software engineer. I live in spreadsheets and code. This whole spiritual thing, it's new territory. Elena, what brought you here? Sarah, my brother died 6 months ago. Car accident. I keep thinking there should be more. Some bigger meaning. Some way to connect with him. Elena stops walking and turns to face Sarah. Elena, I'm sorry, that's actually why I'm here too. My girlfriend, suicide. They stand in silence for a moment. The forest around them seems to hold its breath. Elena, so in TD, Dr. Aldrich told me that Jung believed the dead continue to influence the living through the collective unconscious, that love transcends physical death. Sarah, Do you believe that? Elena: I want to. Last week, I found one of her paintings in my studio, but I know I packed all her things away months ago. A chill wind rustles the leaves above them. Both women look up as a single red leaf falls and lands at Sarah's feet. Sarah, it's June. Why is there a red leaf? Elena kneels and picks it up. As she touches it, it crumbles to dust. Int. Retreat Center, main hall night. The group sits in darkness except for candles placed around the room. Dr. Aldrich's voice is barely above a whisper. Dr. Aldrich Jung developed a technique called active imagination, a way to consciously engage with unconscious content. Tonight, we'll journey inward to meet whatever aspect of ourselves is seeking recognition. She rings a small bell 3 times. Dr. Aldrich, con to D. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Imagine yourself walking down a long corridor. At the end is a door. This is your door. Notice its color, its texture, any symbols carved into its surface. Sarah's breathing deepens. Around the circle, other participants' faces reflect various emotions: fear, curiosity, peace. Dr. Aldrich, con to D. Now place your hand on the door handle. Feel its weight, its temperature, and when you're ready, open the door. Sarah's eyes snap open. She's breathing hard. Sarah, I can't. It won't open. Dr. Aldrich, what happens when you try? Sarah, my hand, it goes through the handle like it's not real. But I can hear someone on the other side calling my name. Dr. Aldrich, what does the voice sound like? Sarah's voice breaks. Sarah, like my brother. Tears stream down her face. Elena reaches over and takes her hand. Dr. Aldrich, the dead often appear in our active imagination when they have something to communicate. Jung believed this wasn't just wishful thinking, but actual contact through the collective unconscious. Sarah. But he's gone. He's been gone for 6 months. Dr. Aldrich, physical death doesn't mean spiritual death, Sarah. In Jungian psychology, we never truly lose those we love. They become part of our inner landscape. XT, forest clearing. Late night, Sarah cannot sleep. She walks through the forest with only moonlight to guide her. She reaches the clearing with the stone circle and natural spring. The water reflects the full moon like a mirror. As she approaches, ripples appear on the surface, though there's no wind. Sarah David, are you here? The ripples intensify. In the disturbed water, shapes seem to form and dissolve. Faces, hands, figures she can't quite make out. Voice, OS, whispered familiar. Sarah. She spins around. Nothing but trees and shadows. Sarah David, I know that's you. I can feel you. Voice, OS. Clearer now. Look deeper, Sarah, not at the water, into it. She kneels at the spring's edge and stares into the depths. The moon's reflection wavers, and for a moment, she sees her brother's face looking back at her. David, his image in the water. You're not crazy. This is real. Sarah, I miss you so much. Why did you have to leave? David, I'm not gone. I'm just different. But you have to let me go, Sarah. You're holding on to grief so tightly that you can't hear what I'm trying to tell you. Sarah? What? Tell me what? David? The red door isn't keeping you out. It's keeping something in, something you're not, ready to face about yourself. The image wavers and begins to fade. Sarah, don't go. Please don't go. David, I'm always with you, but you have to open that door. You have to see what's on the other side. The spring returns to stillness. Sarah stares at her own reflection, tears mixing with moonlight on the water's surface. Inti, Retreat Center, Main Hall, Day 3, the morning session. Several participants share their experiences from the previous night. Sarah sits quietly, looking exhausted. Michael, I dreamed I was standing in front of a mirror, but my reflection was someone else entirely. An older version of myself, but wiser somehow. Dr. Aldrich Jung called this figure the wise old man archetype, the part of ourselves that holds ancient wisdom. What did this older self tell you? Michael, that I've been running from solitude my entire life, marriage, divorce, therapy practice, all ways to avoid being alone with myself. Elena raises her hand. Elena, I think I saw my girlfriend last night. Not in a dream, but here, in my room. Dr. Aldrich, what happened? Elena, I woke up around 3 a.m. and she was sitting on the chair by the window, painting. When I called her name, she looked at me and smiled, then faded away. But the painting stayed. Elena holds up a small canvas. It shows the retreat center, but with additional buildings that don't exist, and people in old-fashioned clothing walking the grounds. Dr. Aldrich Jung believed that spaces can hold psychic impressions, layers of experience that sensitive individuals might perceive. What you've painted may show this land as it was in the past. Jenny, that's impossible. It's just a painting. Dr. Aldrich Jung's definition of impossible was quite different from most people's. He said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Sarah suddenly stands up. Sarah, I need some air. She rushes out of the hall. XT, retreat center. Porch. Continuous. Sarah sits on the wooden steps that lead to the wraparound porch, her head in her hands. The morning air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wildflowers and pine sap. Birds chirp in the nearby trees, their songs providing a stark contrast to the heaviness Sarah carries. Dr. Aldrich emerges from the lodge and pauses in the doorway, assessing whether Sarah needs solitude or companionship. After a moment, she approaches and sits beside her, leaving comfortable space between them. Dr. Aldrich. The process can be overwhelming. Jung warned that spiritual awakening often feels like a form of madness, not because we're losing our sanity, but because we're expanding beyond the narrow definitions of reality our culture provides. Sarah, without looking up, everyone in there is having these profound experiences. Visions, communications with the dead, meaningful dreams, and I'm just stuck, banging against the same closed door I've been banging against for 6 months. Dr. Aldrich. Sometimes being stuck is the experience, sometimes the door stays closed, because we're not asking the right question of it. Sarah? What do you mean? Dr. Aldrich. You keep trying to open the door to reach your brother, but what if the door isn't meant to let you through to him? What if it's meant to help you understand something about yourself first? Sarah finally looks up, her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and unshed tears. Sarah, I saw my brother last night. Had a conversation with him. At a spring in the forest, but it feels like I'm losing my mind. Dr. Aldrich, what did he tell you, Sarah? That I'm holding on to grief so tightly, I can't hear what he's trying to tell me. That there's something behind the red door I'm afraid to face. Dr. Aldrich, and what do you think that might be? Sarah is quiet for a long moment, watching a red cardinal hop along the porch railing. The bird seems unusually bold, coming within a few feet of them before cocking its head as if listening to their conversation. Sarah. The night David died, we had a fight. A terrible fight. I said things I can't take back, things that probably pushed him over the edge. Dr. Aldrich, tell me about that night. Sarah, voice becoming smaller. He called me around 9 p.m. He was crying, which wasn't unusual. David had struggled with depression since high school, but that night was different. He sounded desperate, like he was drowning, and I was the only one who could throw him a rope. She pauses, the memory clearly painful to revisit. Sarah sauntered. He said he couldn't handle life anymore, that every day felt like swimming through concrete, that he was tired of pretending to be okay when everything inside him felt broken. Dr. Aldrich. How did you respond, Sarah? At first, I tried to be supportive. I told him he'd felt this way before and gotten through it. I reminded him of good things in his life, his job, his friends, the trip we'd planned to take together in the fall. Dr. Aldrich. But something changed. Sarah, voice breaking. He kept saying it was different this time, that he'd been thinking about ending it, and I snapped. I'd been having this conversation with him for 15 years, different versions of the same crisis, the same promises to get help, the same cycle of hope and despair. She stands up abruptly and begins pacing the length of the porch. Sarah, quantity. I told him I was tired of being his emotional crutch, that I couldn't keep dropping everything every time he had a bad day. I said he was being manipulative, using suicide threats to get attention. Dr. Eldritch Sarah. Sarah, continuing, unable to stop. I told him that if he really wanted to kill himself, he should stop talking about it and either get professional help or stop calling me with his drama. I said I couldn't save him, and I was tired of trying. The words hang in the air like a physical weight. Sarah stops pacing and stares out at the forest. Sarah, content. Then I hung up on him. 2 hours later, he wrapped his car around a tree on Highway 101. The police said it was an accident, black ice, loss of control. But I know he did it on purpose because I gave him permission to stop fighting. Dr. Eldritch. And you believe his death was your fault. Sarah, whirling around to face her. Of course it was my fault. If I hadn't hung up, if I'd gone to see him instead of being selfish and tired and angry, he'd still be alive. Dr. Eldritch Sarah, can I ask you something? In those 15 years of supporting David through his depression, how many times did similar conversations happen? Sarah, I don't know. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Dr. Eldritch. And in all those times, how many times did your support, your love, your willingness to be there prevent him from attempting suicide? Sarah, he never actually tried before, not that I know of. Dr. Eldritch. So, for 15 years, your brother lived with clinical depression, a disease that literally rewires the brain to focus on hopelessness and death. And during all that time, your presence in his life, your love for him, helped keep him alive. Until one night, when you were human instead of perfect. Sarah sinks back down onto the steps, the fight going out of her. Dr. Eldritch. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the wounded healer, the idea that our deepest wounds often become our greatest sources of compassion and wisdom. But before we can heal others, we must learn to extend compassion to ourselves. Sarah, how can I forgive myself for letting my brother die? Dr. Eldritch. By understanding that you didn't let him die. He made a choice in a moment of unbearable pain, a choice influenced by brain chemistry, by years of accumulated suffering, by factors that had nothing to do with your words that night. A red cardinal lands on the porch railing directly in front of Sarah, looking at her with bright, intelligent eyes. Dr. Eldritch. TD. Cardinals are often considered messengers from those who've passed. In many traditions, they're believed to appear when our loved ones want us to know we're not alone. Sarah, to the cardinal, if you're really David, I need you to know how sorry I am, how much I miss you, how much I wish I could take back every word I said that night. The cardinal tilts its head as if considering her words, then flies away toward the forest. Dr. Eldritch. Perhaps your brother's spirit is trying to tell you something. Perhaps the red door in your dreams isn't keeping you away from him. It's keeping you away from forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Sarah. But what if I forgive myself and forget him? What if letting go of the guilt means letting go of him? Dr. Eldritch. Jung believed that guilt is one of the most powerful barriers to spiritual connection. Love and guilt cannot coexist in the same space. By holding on to guilt, you're actually blocking your ability to feel David's continued presence in your life. Sarah. How do you know all this? Have you lost someone too? Dr. Eldritch is quiet for a moment, her professional demeanor softening. Dr. Eldritch. My daughter. Overdose. 7 years ago. For the longest time, I believed that if I'd been a better mother, if I'd seen the signs, if I'd forced her into treatment sooner, she'd still be alive. Sarah. What changed? Dr. Aldrich. She visited me, much like your brother visited you last night. She told me that addiction was her battle, not mine, that loving someone doesn't mean being responsible for saving them from themselves. Sarah. Do you still see her, Dr. Aldrich? Not in the dramatic way I did initially, but I feel her presence when I'm helping others navigate grief. It's as if she's working through me, using my pain to help heal other people's pain. Sarah. Maybe that's what the door's protecting. Maybe behind it isn't David. Maybe it's the part of me that knows how to help other people who are drowning in guilt, like I've been drowning. Dr. Aldrich, what does that possibility feel like? Sarah. Terrifying and necessary. And like maybe David's death doesn't have to be meaningless if I can learn something from it that helps other people. The conversation is interrupted by Elena appearing in the doorway of the lodge. Elena. Sarah? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something I think you need to see. Int. Retreat Center. Sarah's room. Day 3 evening. Sarah sits on her bed with her journal. Jenny is at the evening group session. Sarah, writing aloud. Day 3. Dr. Aldrich says guilt blocks spiritual connection. But how do you let go of the worst moment of your life? How do you forgive yourself for being human? She pauses, pen hovering over the page. Sarah. Conti D. Maybe the red door isn't hiding something terrible. Maybe it's hiding forgiveness. Maybe. David's trying to show me it's okay to let go. A soft knock at the door interrupts her. She opens it to find Elena holding a cup of tea. Elena, thought you might need this. Chamomile. Sarah, thank you. Come in. Elena sits on Jenny's bed across from Sarah. Elena, I wanted to tell you something about what you shared today with Dr. Aldrich. Sarah, you heard that? Elena, some of it. And I want you to know, my girlfriend Maria, she struggled with the same thing, depression. And the night she died, we fought too. Sarah looks up, surprised. Elena, Contied. She wanted to move back home to Mexico. Said she couldn't handle life in the city anymore. I told her she was giving up, that she was weak, that if she left, we were over. Sarah, what happened? Elena. She took pills that night, left a note saying she was tired of being a burden, but Sarah, her death wasn't my fault any more than David's was yours. They were both in pain long before our words reached them. Sarah, how do you know that, Elena? Because Maria visited me, not in a dream. She came to my studio 3 weeks after the funeral, told me she was sorry for leaving the way she did, but that the pain had become too much to bear. She said my words didn't push her over the edge. They just happened to be the last words she heard from someone she loved. Sarah wipes tears from her eyes. Sarah, do you really believe she visited you? Elena? I painted her that night, a portrait I'd never seen her pose for. When I finished, I knew she was at peace. That's when I decided to come here. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a folded piece of paper. Elena, Cont Ede. I found this in my bag this morning. I didn't write it. Sarah unfolds the paper. In handwriting she doesn't recognize, it reads, "The door opens when you stop pushing and start allowing." Sarah D. David. Elena, I think our loved ones are trying to help us heal, but we have to be willing to receive their messages. N.T. Retreat Center, Main Hall, night. The group gathers for another active imagination session. Candles flicker. Around the darkened room, Dr. Aldrich, tonight we'll practice what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. Sit with both your pain and your healing, your guilt and your forgiveness, your fear and your courage. Sarah closes her eyes and immediately sees the long hallway with the red door at the end. Dr. Aldrich, Conti Dogdi. Instead of trying to open the door, simply stand before it. Notice what you feel. Notice what the door represents. In her mind, Sarah approaches the red door. This time, she doesn't reach for the handle. She simply places her palm flat against the wood. Sarah, in the visualization, I'm not afraid of you anymore. The door begins to glow with warm red light. Voice from behind door. David's voice. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Sarah, I'm sorry I hung up on you. I'm sorry I wasn't there. David, you were always there. In every good memory I had. In every moment of love I ever felt. You didn't fail me. You gave me reasons to keep fighting as long as I could. Sarah, I miss you. David, I know. But missing me and blaming yourself are different things. One is love, the other is punishment. The red door slowly swings open. Behind it is not a room, but a vast, starlit sky. David stands in the threshold, translucent but smiling. David commented, You can let go now. It's safe to let go, Sarah. Will I still be able to feel you, David? You'll feel me in every act of kindness you show yourself, in every moment you choose love over fear, in every red door you choose to open instead of pushing against. Sarah steps forward and embraces her brother. He feels warm and real for just a moment before dissolving into points of light that swirl around her and fade. Sarah opens her eyes in the meditation hall. Tears stream down her face, but for the first time in months, they feel cleansing rather than painful. Dr. Aldrich. What did you experience, Sarah? Sarah, forgiveness. I experienced forgiveness. Wex tea. Forest clearing. Dawn. Sarah sits by the natural spring as the sun rises. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the golden sky. She opens her journal and begins to write. Sarah, writing aloud. Day 4. Jung was right. The privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. But I think I understand now that who you truly are includes all of it. The love and the loss, the guilt and the grace, the connection and the solitude. Red cardinal lands on a stone near the spring's edge. It cocks its head at Sarah, then begins to drink from the water. Sarah, commented. Spiritual awakening doesn't feel lonely because we're disconnected from others. It feels lonely because we're being asked to connect with parts of ourselves we've kept hidden. The shadow Jung wrote about isn't just our dark impulses, it's also our capacity for healing, our ability to forgive, our power to transform pain into wisdom. The cardinal finishes drinking and flies away, its red wings catching the morning light. Sarah, commented. David's death opened a door I didn't know existed. A door to understanding that love doesn't end with physical death, it transforms. And guilt doesn't honor the dead. Forgiveness does. She closes the journal and stands. As she walks back toward the retreat center, she doesn't notice the figure watching her from the tree line, Dr. Aldrich, who has been quietly observing Sarah's early morning ritual. Int. Retreat Center, Main Hall, Day 4, the final morning session. The group sits in circle, but the atmosphere feels different, lighter somehow. Dr. Aldrich Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires us to integrate all aspects of ourselves, including what we perceive as negative. How has this week changed your relationship with your shadow? Michael, I realized my fear of solitude was actually fear of my own thoughts. This week, I've learned that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means being complete within yourself. Elena, I understand now that my girlfriend's suicide wasn't a rejection of our love. It was her way of escaping pain that had nothing to do with me. I can honor her memory without carrying her pain. All eyes turn to Sarah. Sarah Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves. But I think the reverse is also true. Everything we learn to accept about ourselves helps us love others more fully. She pauses, looking around the circle. Sarah, commented. My brother struggled with depression for years. I thought if I loved him enough, I could fix him. But love isn't about fixing people. It's about witnessing them, accepting them, being present for their journey without taking responsibility for their destination. Dr. Aldrich. And the red door from your dreams? Sarah. It was never locked. I was just afraid to walk through it. Behind the door wasn't something terrible. It was the part of myself that knows how to forgive. The part that understands love transcends physical form. Dr. Aldrich Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed. This week, you've all met aspects of yourselves you didn't know existed. You've been transformed.ext. Retreat center, parking lot. Day participants load their cars and say goodbye. Sarah hugs Elena tightly. Elena, will you keep in touch? Sarah, absolutely. And Elena? Thank you for helping me see that I wasn't crazy. That love really can transcend death. Elena, thank you for showing me that guilt and love don't have to coexist, that I can miss Maria without punishing myself for her choice. Michael approaches and joins their conversation. Michael, I've been thinking about what Dr. Aldrich said about synchronicity. Is it a coincidence that three people dealing with loss and guilt ended up in the same group? Sarah Jung would say, there are no coincidences, only meaningful connections we are finally ready to see. Dr. Aldrich walks over to the group. Dr. Aldrich, remember the work doesn't end here. Spiritual awakening isn't a destination, it's an ongoing process of becoming. And yes, it can feel lonely sometimes. But that loneliness isn't isolation. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Sarah, Dr. Aldrich, can I ask you something? How do you know when you're really connecting with someone who's passed on versus just projecting your own wishes? Dr. Aldrich Jung's answer would be that the distinction matters less than the healing that results. Whether David visited you objectively or subjectively, the forgiveness you found is real. The peace you've discovered is real. The love you feel is real. She hands Sarah a small card. Dr. Aldrich Saunted. Something to remember your time here, Sarah. Reads the card aloud. Loneliness is the human condition. Aloneness is the divine condition. The spiritual journey is learning the difference. Sarah. Thank you for everything, Dr. Aldrich. You did the work, Sarah. I just provided the space. As Sarah drives away from the retreat center, she glances in her rearview mirror. Dr. Aldrich stands in front of the lodge, hand raised in farewell. For just a moment, Sarah thinks she sees a second figure beside her, translucent, familiar, smiling. She looks again, but there's only Dr. Aldrich alone. Sarah smiles and continues down the mountain road. NT. Sarah's car. Daya's, Sarah drives. Through winding mountain roads, she speaks aloud to herself, or perhaps to someone else. Sarah, I understand now why spiritual awakening feels so lonely, David. It's because you're being asked to release everything you thought you knew about yourself, about life, about death. You have to sit in the space between your old beliefs and your new understanding. She passes a sign that reads, Returning to city, 50 miles. Sarah counted. But loneliness and aloneness aren't the same thing, are they? Loneliness is feeling disconnected from others. Aloneness is feeling connected to everything, including you. A red cardinal flies across the road in front of her car, and Sarah smiles. Sarah, Comte D. Jung was right. The privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are, and who I truly am includes the part of me that will always love. My brother, the part that's learned to forgive myself, and the part that knows love, doesn't end with death. It just changes form. She reaches the bottom of the mountain as the sun sets behind her, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Fade to black, 1 year later exed, Red Door Healing Center. Daya converted Victorian house sits on 5 acres of wooded land just outside a small mountain town. The building's wraparound porch is painted white, but the front door is a vibrant red that seems to glow in the afternoon sunlight. A hand-carved wooden sign reads, "The Red Door Healing Center, founded 2020. Gardens surround the property, tended by volunteers who found their own healing through working with the earth. Prayer flags from various traditions flutter in the breeze, creating splashes of color against the evergreen backdrop. Sarah stands on the front porch, now wearing simple, comfortable clothing that suggests someone who's found peace with herself. Her hair is longer, streaked with natural highlights from spending more time outdoors. Most notably, her eyes hold a quality they lacked before, the deep calm that comes from having walked through fire and emerged transformed. Elena approaches from the garden, dirt under her fingernails and paint still visible on her clothes. She's been working on a mural that covers one entire side of the building, an intricate mandala incorporating images from nature, spiritual symbols, and faces of people who found healing here. Elena, the Martinez family, just called. They'll be here tomorrow for their first session, 3 months since their son's overdose. Sarah, how's Mrs. Martinez handling things? Elena, like we all did at first, convinced it's her fault, that she should have seen the signs, that she failed as a mother. Sarah, I'll make sure Dr. Aldrich knows. She's particularly good with parental guilt. They stand together, looking out over the property that has become a sanctuary for dozens of families, navigating the aftermath of suicide loss. Elena, do you ever miss your old life? The certainty of code and algorithms? Sarah, sometimes. There was a simplicity to it. Problems had solutions, variables had values, systems either worked or they didn't. But this feels like what I was always meant to be doing. A car pulls into the driveway, a modest sedan with Ohio plates. A middle-aged couple emerges, looking lost and uncertain in the way that all newcomers do. Sarah, Conti D first session. I should go welcome them. Sarah walks toward the couple, her approach gentle and unhurried. The woman is clutching a photograph, the way newcomers almost always do, holding on to images of their lost loved ones like talismans. Sarah, Cont D, to the couple. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, I'm Sarah Chen. We spoke on the phone. Mrs. Patterson, voice trembling. Yes, thank you for agreeing to see us. We weren't sure after what happened. Sarah, there's nothing you could have done differently. I know you don't believe that yet, but by the end of your time here, you will. She leads them toward the red door, which stands open in welcome. Sarah, Conti D. The first thing you need to know is that your son's death doesn't define your worth as parents. The second thing is that love doesn't end with physical death. It transforms. NT, Red Door Healing Center, main room. Day, the interior has been converted into a comfortable meeting space with soft lighting, comfortable chairs arranged in circles, and artwork created by participants covering the walls. The atmosphere is peaceful, but not somber, more like a living room where honest conversations happen than a clinical setting. Dr. Aldrich facilitates a group session with 8 participants of various ages. Michael is there, now serving as my co-facilitator after completing his own healing journey. His presence as someone who's been through the process provides hope for newcomers. Dr. Aldrich, remember, guilt and love cannot coexist in the same space. Every moment you spend punishing yourself for what you didn't do, didn't see, didn't say, is a moment you're not available to feel your loved one's continued presence in your life. A young woman, 22, raises her hand. This is Jessica, whose best friend died by suicide 3 months ago. Jessica, but how do you know they're still present? How do you know it's not just wishful thinking? Michael, gently, Jung would say that the distinction matters less than the healing that results. Whether our experiences of continued connection are objectively real or subjectively meaningful, the peace we find is real. The love we feel is real. He looks around the circle with the compassion of someone who's walked this path. Michael, Con AD. For 2 years after my father died, I carried around anger and unfinished business that poisoned every relationship I tried to have. It wasn't until I learned to forgive myself for being an imperfect son that I could feel the love he'd always had for me. Alina enters the room carrying a canvas. She's been working with participants on expressive art therapy, helping them process emotions too complex for words. Alina to Jessica. Would you like to see what your friend looked like in the painting you started yesterday? Jessica nods, and Elena reveals a portrait that captures not just a face, but an essence. Joy, wisdom, love that seems to radiate from the canvas. Jessica, tears streaming. That's exactly how she looked when she was truly happy, but I painted her from memory. How did I capture details I didn't consciously remember? Elena Jung believed that love leaves psychic impressions that transcend ordinary memory. When we paint or write or sing our loved ones, we're not just remembering them, we're channeling them. D.R. Eldridge. This is what Jung meant by the collective unconscious. We're all connected through a shared psychic space where love, once created, continues to exist and influence the living. EXT, Red Door Healing Center, Garden. Sunset Sarah and Elena walk through the memorial garden they've created behind the center. Stones carved with names and dates mark spots where families have planted trees or flowers in honor of their lost loved ones. Each memorial tells a story of love that transcends death. Elena. Sometimes I can't believe this is our life now. A year ago, we were both drowning in guilt and isolation. Now we're helping other people find their way to shore. Sarah Jung wrote that wounded healers are the most effective healers because they understand the territory. We know what it feels like to be convinced that love ends with death, that forgiveness is impossible, that some doors can never be opened. They stop at a particularly beautiful section of the garden where red roses climb a wooden trellis. A small plaque reads, David Chen, beloved brother, love transcends all boundaries. Sarah Contid. I felt him yesterday during the family session. The Johnsons lost their teenage son, and the mother was so angry at God, at herself, at her son for leaving them. I heard myself saying things I never consciously thought, offering perspectives I didn't know I had. Elena. What did you tell her? Sarah? That anger is just love with nowhere to go, that her son didn't leave because he didn't love his family. He left because the pain became larger than his ability to carry it, and that the love they shared is still here in this world, waiting for her to stop punishing herself long enough to feel it. Elena touches the plaque gently. Elena, do you think Maria approves of what we're doing here? Face Sarah. I think she and David are probably collaborating on the other side, sending us exactly the people who need what we have to offer. As if summoned by their conversation, a red cardinal lands on the trellis above David's memorial stone. It sits perfectly still for a long moment, then flies directly toward Sarah, circling her once before disappearing into the forest. Elena, I'll never get used to that. Sarah, I hope I never do. The day I start taking miracles for granted is the day I stop being useful to people who need them. NT, Red Door Healing Center, Sarah's office. Night, Sarah sits at a simple desk, writing in a journal. Not the desperate searching entries of a year ago, but reflective observations of someone who's found purpose in pain, transformed. Sarah, writing aloud. 1 year anniversary entry. Jung was right. Spiritual awakening does feel like loneliness initially. But that loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. We have to become empty enough of our old beliefs about life and death before we can be filled with new understanding. She pauses, looking out the window at the garden where solar lights create gentle pathways between the memorial trees. Sarah. WKONTD, continuing to write. I used to think David's death was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I understand it was the doorway to the most meaningful work of my life. His suicide wasn't a rejection of love, it was love caught in unbearable pain, and my guilt wasn't proof of my failure, it was proof of how much I loved him. A soft knock on the door interrupts her writing. Elena enters carrying 2 cups of tea. Elena thought you might want some company. The ceremony planning is making me emotional. Sarah. Tomorrow's memorial service? His first anniversary felt impossible to imagine surviving. But now I want to celebrate her life, instead of just mourning her death. She sits across from Sarah, and they share comfortable silence for a moment. Elena, counted. 43 families have come through our program this year. 43 people who might have spent decades trapped in guilt and isolation if they hadn't found this place. Sarah. And every one of them taught us something new about healing. Remember Mrs. Chen, no relation, whose daughter died in that car. Accident? Elena. The one who blamed herself for letting her daughter drive that night, Sarah. She said something last week that's been staying with me. She said she realized that protecting our loved ones from all possible harm isn't love, it's fear. Love is teaching them to navigate life's dangers while trusting their ability to make choices. Elena. Even when their choices lead to death, Sarah. Especially then. Because the alternative is believing that love should be able to control outcomes, which means any tragic outcome represents a failure of love. Elena sets down her tea and looks directly at Sarah. Elena, can I tell you something? Maria visited me in a dream 2 nights ago. Not the desperate, dramatic visits from early grief, but a quiet conversation like we used to have on Sunday mornings. Sarah, what did she say? Elena, that she's proud of what we've built here, that her death is serving a purpose she never could have imagined when she was alive and in pain. She said suicide survivors, both those who die and those who are left behind, have a particular calling to help others understand that love transcends physical form. Sarah, do you think that's true? That there's some cosmic reason why our loved ones died the way they did? Elena, I think meaning is something we create, not something we discover. David and Maria's deaths are meaningful because we've chosen to transform our grief into service. But if we'd chosen to remain trapped in guilt and isolation, their deaths would have been equally meaningful as cautionary tales. Sarah, Jung wrote that we don't have experiences, experiences have us. Maybe David's death didn't happen to me as much as it happened through me, creating a pathway for other people to find healing. Elena. Speaking of which, we got 3 new applications this week, including one from a retreat center in Colorado that wants to model their suicide grief program on ours. Sarah, the work is spreading. Lena, the need was always there. We just created a space where people feel safe enough to admit they need help integrating love and loss. Sarah closes her journal and looks around the office, which is decorated with artwork created by program participants, photographs of memorial ceremonies, and letters from families describing their healing journeys. Sarah, you know what I've learned this year? Spiritual awakening doesn't feel lonely because we're disconnected from others. It feels lonely because we're being asked to connect with parts of ourselves we've kept hidden. The shadow Jung wrote about isn't just our dark impulses, it's also our capacity for healing, our ability to transform pain into wisdom. Elena, and the red door from your dreams. Sarah, it was never keeping me away from David. It was protecting my own capacity for forgiveness until I was strong enough to handle it. Behind the door wasn't something terrible. It was the part of myself that knew how to love without conditions, including the condition that people I love should never die. XT. Red Door Healing Center, Memorial Garden. Dawn Sarah sits on a bench in the memorial garden as the sun rises over the mountains. The garden is more lush now, a year of growth having transformed individual memorial plantings into a coherent ecosystem of healing. She's no longer writing frantically in a journal, but sitting in comfortable silence, allowing thoughts and emotions to arise and pass without struggle. This is not the desperate searching of early grief, but the peaceful presence of someone who's learned to hold both sorrow and joy simultaneously. A red cardinal lands on the bench beside her, closer than any wild bird should come to a human. It looks at her with what can only be described as recognition before flying to David's memorial stone and then back to her shoulder. Sarah, softly to the cardinal. "Good morning, David. Thank you for sending the families who need us. Thank you for helping me understand that your death wasn't the end of our relationship. It was the beginning of a new kind of love." The cardinal tilts its head as if listening, then flies to Elena's memorial stone for Maria, then back to Sarah. "Sarah," Conti did, "and tell Maria that Elena's doing beautiful work. The art therapy program she developed is helping people express emotions they didn't know they had words for." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Elena appears from the house, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the paint-stained clothes that have become her uniform. "Elena, starting early today?" Sarah, the Patterson family, arrives this afternoon for their intensive weekend. "I wanted to sit with David and Maria before the day gets busy." Elena sits on the bench beside Sarah, and the cardinal flies to her outstretched finger with remarkable trust. "Elena, I had the most interesting dream last night. David and Maria were standing together in front of a huge red door. Not the one from your original dreams, but a massive door that seemed to open onto infinite space." Sarah, "What were they doing?" Elena, "Welcoming people. Hundreds of people who seemed to be crossing from one side of the door to the other, and every person who crossed through looked lighter somehow. Like they'd set down weights they'd been carrying for lifetimes." Sarah, "Sounds like they're busy on the other side." Elena, David looked directly at me and said, "Tell Sarah the door was never about reaching us. It was about reaching the part of herself that knows love never dies." The cardinal flies from Elena's finger to the memorial stone, where it's joined by a second cardinal. Unusual, since cardinals are typically solitary birds. "Sarah, I think they approve of what we've built here." Elena, "More than approve. I think they're actively helping. Every time we think we're in over our heads with a particularly difficult case, exactly the right resource appears. The right book, the right person, the right insight." Sarah, Jung called that synchronicity, meaningful. Coincidences that suggest a deeper pattern to existence. Elena, "What do you think the pattern is?" Sarah, "That love is the organizing principle of the universe. That consciousness doesn't end with physical death, but transforms into new ways of serving, healing, and connection. That our loved ones don't disappear. They become part of how we love other people." The 2 cardinals fly away together toward the rising sun, their flight path forming a perfect heart shape against the golden sky. Sarah, Conti D, ready for another day of helping people discover that spiritual awakening only feels lonely until you realize you're never actually alone. "Elena, let's go open some doors." They walk together toward the red door of the Healing Center, which stands open in welcome to all who seek to transform their pain into purpose, their grief into grace, their endings into new beginnings. As they reach the threshold, Sarah pauses and looks back at the memorial garden one more time. Sarah whispered, "Thank you, David, for dying in a way that taught me how to live." She steps through the red door, no longer afraid of what waits on the other side, knowing that love in all its forms is always there to welcome her home.